It's bread and butter time. A lot of you, if you've been paying any attention at all to my little channel, probably know your way around the Beano by this stage. Dennis the Menace, he's a brat. Minnie the Minx, she's girl Dennis, but nobody got mad because it was before the 2000s. And Roger the Dodger, who has no idea what a dodge is. You can explain it to him, but you can't understand it for him. You know the drill here. It's the thing I cover most and will continue to cover, but I thought this week it would be a bit of fun to go a little more in depth than I usually do and focus on the beginnings of maybe not just the Beano, but comic picture books in general. Kind of like my other show Pilots, only with the greatest British comic of all time. Yeah, I said it. You can keep your 2000 AD and your hoot. The Beano is king here, and like most aristocracies, it has a rich beginning, so let's delve into it. Cartoon picture drawings aren't anything new. We used to do them in caves, for God's sake. And an advantage those cave drawings had was, despite being a bit crap, they were the first. They were early market adapters, setting the trend, so we still see them pop up here and there in documentaries and some books we never read. We continue to develop the art form throughout time, as Egyptians decorated their little triangle building interiors and Greeks adorned their vases with their problematic gods. Cartoon pictures were going strong, then all of a sudden some bloody Romans put down their pizza and decided it was time to be a bit more realistic and serious. And while things admittedly looked good, they weren't fun. Except Caravaggio, he was fun. This whole Renaissance nonsense set art back hundreds of years in my opinion. Luckily, cameras were invented at some stage and people decided, let's get back to the fun stuff. We don't need realistic portraits anymore. At the turn of the 20th century in the United States, in the heat of a vicious newspaper war between tycoons Joseph Pulitzer, to which the prestigious award gets its name, and William Randolph Hearst, who that old-timey movie Citizen Kane was based on, a new art form burst onto the scene. The newspaper comic strip, changing everything. During the war of sensationalism, each tried to outdo the other by ruining society and inventing more and more eye-catching headlines, or, as we would call them today, clickbait. Well, Pulitzer's New York World began publishing A Little Kid in 1895 in a strip titled Hogan's Alley. This was The Yellow Kid, created by cartoonist Richard F. Alcott. Don't worry, the Yellow Kid wasn't an Asian stereotype. Phew! I know you were all thinking it, and I was thinking it too. But luckily, he was in fact an Irish stereotype, so hooray! The Yellow Kid was a poor, bald, snaggle-toothed, barefoot boy who wore an oversized yellow shirt. Wait, Irish, yellow shirts, poor, bald, ink. He's me! I'm the Yellow Kid! Well, this urchin hooligan trying to make his way in New York would get himself into all sorts of slapstick humor and social commentary jams. He was a beloved rascal and got the attention of that prick Hearst, who actually put his hand in his pocket to steal the artist away. If you want to be nitpicky, the Yellow Kid was a cartoon more so than a strip. At least at first, as he appeared as a single image in the newspapers. Other papers already had been publishing cartoons as well, and in Europe there were many cartoons that predated the Yellow Kid. But cartoon historian Alan Hull says they came from magazines and books, not newspapers. So there. The other reason I singled out the Yellow Kid is because Alcott's use of word balloons in the 1896 cartoon titled The Yellow Kid and His New Phonograph. This groundbreaking strip influenced the basic appearance and the use of word balloons in subsequent newspaper comic strips and comic books. Boy, this Yellow Kid, he's really influenced culture, and in more ways than you know. He is also responsible for helping coin the term yellow journalism, but that is a whole other thing, isn't it? It's nothing we need to worry about. Let's get back to the comics. In 1897, reprints of his black and white newspaper strips were published into the first comic book titled The Yellow Kid in McFadden's Flats. Haha! Now we're sucking diesel. The first comic book. Okay. There may have been earlier comic books, such as Master Flash Gold's Splendiferous Stream in 1755. Remember that? And The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbuck in 1837, a classic we've all read. But they didn't set a big trend, now did they? No, they didn't. Like all good things, it's the Irish we must give credit to, so you're welcome. The Yellow Kid, he's responsible for it all. The overwhelming success of the character drove other papers to publish similar strips, and thus the Yellow Kid is seen as a landmark in the development of the comic strip as a mass medium. Occult strips appeared twice a week in the journal and took on a form that was to become standard. Multi-panel pictures with text that were inextricably bound to each other. Comics historian Bill Blackbeard, real name by the way, asserted this made it nothing less than the first definitive comic strip in history. Case fucking closed. As time went on, other papers released their comic strips in this newfangled comic book format, leading to many innovations, including main eventers like The Shadow and Superman. But let's get back to old Blighty and our mates in D.C.Thompson, DCT. 17 years before our beloved funny book, DCT was in the comic game with comics such as The Adventures in 1921. Rover and Wizard came next in 1922, and 1 year later we got Vanguard in 1923. I like the sound of that, Vanguard. I bet that one stuck around a long time. But skipping along to a little later, we get the Skipper in 1930, and finally in 1933 we got the Hotspur. All of these were big hits for DCT, except the Vanguard, which died very quickly in 1926, but the rest were pretty good and became known as the Big Five. All beginning as action-centric comics for boys, they became more and more humorous, or whatever passed for humor in the 1930s. Probably racism, let's be honest, but it helped pioneer the format that would go on to shape the Dandy and the Beano. Let's have a look at this page from a 1936 Wizard magazine. We have what I guess has to be the first softie. My goodness! Sorry big guns, it wasn't you. So in this strip we see Softie Simpkins being a good lad helping clean up, but accidentally getting some dust on a posh oaf. He immediately apologizes, of course, because he is British, and dusts him down. Next we have a real menace. Put a kick me sign on this jerk, but a police officer doing a hell of a job, I must say, resists the temptation of kicking him and removes it from his back. The oaf, beyond furious, thinking it was the doing of Simpkins, returns and kicks him up the arse in the first recording of softie bashing in a British comic. Underneath we get Nero and Zero, the rollicking Romans who use ingenuity to fix, frankly, a passive-aggressive gift from Caesar. Seriously, who gives two people the gift of one chair? That would be like buying a table of two, one glass of wine. I hope he got repeatedly stabbed by some senators for that. An artist who drew on Nero and Zero, Alan Morley, would later go on to draw for the Beano. Below we also get the fantastically titled "A Smart Guy Turns Pink When He's Given a Drink." I officially want that on my tombstone. In this comic, a guy throws a rock at his buddy to make his film funny. This gag would later be blatantly stolen by Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Over in the Rover we get Nosey Parker, our prize busybody. Nosey Parker goes where he is not invited and proceeds to tell two dancers they are doing it all wrong. He is immediately thrown out, thank goodness, after informing them they should dance on their toes, and we get a baller 1935 pun. It was just toe bad on Nosey. As you can tell from that vintage strip, the humor in British comics never ever progressed any further. Ever. I mean, why would you though? If you nail something that good in 1935, you just keep doing it forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. The art in all of these strips, by the way, are really great, and the Wizard even had some color, but don't get used to that. This is the British comic business. Well, it's now December 4th, 1937, and artists from the Big Five Action Comics decided to go full-time with their funny cartoon pictures, and the Dandy is launched. This was to be the first of another planned big series of 5 comics with a focus solely on humor, and the Dandy was an immediate hit. Hooray! Its cover star, drawn by James Crichton, was Corky the cat, who was chosen over a black rabbit. James would continue to draw Corky for nearly 25 years, as well as other strips for the Beano. Hell of a guy. Speaking of the Beano, it's only a few months later, on July 30th, 1938, a day that will live in infamy, we got the release, no, the birth of the longest running comic of all time, the Beano. To help advertise the coming of Christ, I mean the coming of the Beano, other DCT comics were called to action to help get the Beano off to a solid start. The Wizard carried in it a do-it-yourself pull-out sample of Beano pages, as did Adventure. The handout came with instructions to please hand this comic to youngsters, and gives you a really good preview of the first Beano and what to expect. We get some strips like Ping and Hokey's magic bowler hat. We see Morgan the Mighty, the strongest man in the world, and a preview of 7 big stories in the Beano. I don't know about you, but it's the Wangles of Granny Green that has caught my eye, and that's one I want to read. We also see other characters who will feature in the comic, like Lord Snooty and his pals, our aristocratic beta finally here to show the riffraff what real class is all about. Then we have the forgotten Cracker Jack and Wild Boy of the Woods, who I'm sure they're fine, but who cares, because we get a tease for Big Ego as the cover star of the color front page, and we also learn that a free Whoopi mask comes with issue 1. Wow, what a great preview. This sneak peek was in the action-based comics. I can only imagine what the Dandy did to hype up Beano number 1. So the Dandy was always lame, apparently. Well, it's better than nothing, I guess. So, if you were a kid in the 30s like me, you knew the Beano was on Tuesday and the Dandy on Fridays. Okay, thanks Dandy. Glad you made that clear. Well, despite the Dandy's best efforts, the Beano was also a great success, with issue 1 selling nearly 443,000 copies. The Beano was here to stay. Hooray! Just a very quick peekaboo of issue 1, where we can see the opening set of strips were designed to mirror the American style newspaper funnies, but thankfully the all important page 3, the first page you see when opening the comic, belonged to our blue blood Marmaduke Lord and Saviour, Snooty, Earl of Bunkerton. This first Snooty comic, I must say, is very beautifully illustrated and really contrasts to those crass American wannabe strips. We see Lord Snooty dressing up as one of the proletarians to play with his friends on his birthday. He wasn't the worst lad, was he? Our young Lord Snooty. I think that covers my look into the birth of the Beano, and as the saying goes, the rest is history. I only gave a little taste of issue 1. I have it. In fact, I have 2. But if you want to see me cover these in full, then you'd had better subscribe, hadn't you? Go on, hit the button. You know you want to. So that was a little different. Went a bit off the rails with the Yellow Man stuff, but I got back on track, I think. I did okay. But let me know if you like these more history-esque video films, and if you would like to see me cover more of the Beano's history, from the war years to the Golden Age. Comment and let me know down below.